Now I'll use that to hold on to it while I'm working on it. Now I've got a piece of wood that I've used for something similar to this before, and it's almost the right size, just like it is. It's actually a teeny bit tight, which that I can deal with. And this thing is tapered. It's skinnier here than it is back here. So as I slide it forward, it gets more and more snug. And then I'm going to put a little screw from here down into this part here. Alright, that gives me something to hold on to. This particular stripper that I use is made by Clean Strip. I really like it because the work time is so liberal. You can wait 24 hours to take this stuff off. I'm going to let it sit all night because it's about 8 o'clock. And there you go. Give that a few hours or up to 24 hours. I just have a scrap piece of Formica. It was a sink countertop sink cutout, and I set my pieces that are the strippers working, because sometimes it'll drip and I don't want to drip it on my saw table, which has got varnish and wax on it. I take a plastic, this is a package, it's just a plastic package that something came in, but it's got a fairly stiff kind of a plastic, and I'll make me a scraper out of this thing. The right shape, you can cut it with a razor knife, and you can cut whatever shape you want out of it, or a pocket knife if you keep a sharp pocket knife. The shape you cut, concave, convex, pointed, whatever, lets you scrape off this this residue of the stripper that you sprayed on. And I will put some sawdust on this piece of Formica. This is just shavings that came off of my planer, and it catches this junk that you scrape off. Some people use a credit card. Some people use a like a Bondo applicator that you get at the body shop. People use those plastic little, they just call them little plastic paddles or something. But this right here comes out of my trash, and I don't have to go to the store and buy it. So I'm kind of frugal that way. But this also works really well, and you can, like I said, you can trim it whatever shape you need. If you need to get into some tight places, the ability to trim it and shape it is easier than with one of those plastic squeegee Bondo type applicators. One thing about stripping with chemicals like this, it is wet when it comes out of the spray can. It's wet, and so if you have dings, a ding is what I call a ding, is a compressed area where something's hit it. It's bumped up against something, and it's smashed the grain, it's flattened it, it's compressed it. Well, to combat compression, you add moisture. If you'll add a little drop of water, or you can spit on it, or whatever you want to do, just introduce some moisture to that compressed area, and it will puff up. It'll regain its natural size, its original size. And so when it puffs up, it doesn't matter what kind of moisture you reintroduce. If you do it, it'll puff up. And so the stripping process actually puffs up those little areas. This little scraper, I'm making a round scraper out of it to get down in those barrel grooves. And up here where I put my little holding stick is kind of tough to get to. I'm going to have to get a rag and pull that out. After I get done with the removing of the finish and the stripper, which has now joined. The stripper and the finish are like one. After I remove all that I can, I'll take a coarse rag like flannel or terry cloth, and I'll saturate that, soak it pretty good with lacquer thinner. You can use acetone, MEK, and I'll take that that lacquer thinner rag and finish pulling that off of there. Every now and then you'll come up on a finish, it just won't come off with the first coat. You'll have to respray this stuff. I had a Browning here a while back, an A5 that was about 30 years old, and I put, I think, 3 coats, maybe 4 coats of stripper on that Browning to get it to loosen that finish up, and still had to come along with a straight block and sand off some of those little spots of finish that just, it was just really a stubborn, durable, very, very durable finish. Several layers of newspaper will work for this, just something to catch this, the old finish. I'm using sawdust because I happen to have it. We used to take the paper here in our local town, and we don't anymore. I never did read it much. I had a pastor several years ago that said that every night before he went to bed he would drink a glass of water and read the local paper. He had nothing on his stomach and nothing on his mind. So that's kind of the way I feel about our local newspaper. Another thing that stripper and lacquer thinner do is they remove the built-up oil and grease of years of somebody oiling their gun down and wiping it down with silicone rags and oily rags, spraying it down with WD-40 and letting it run all over the place. Because when you're starting to refinish a stock, if it's still got oil residue in it, it'll drive you up a wall. It is really a pain to try to get all of the oil out of wood that's been wrapped around a gun for 40 or 50 or 60 years. I don't know what kind of wood this is. This thing was made in Spain, and I'm sure they have their own variety of walnut over there. There's French walnut and English walnut and American black walnut, Claro walnut from California, Turkish walnut from the mountains of Turkey. Got a feeling that, I know this isn't Turkish, but it's really dark. It's a nice, good looking wood. It's not super heavy. Turkish walnut is very light in weight, but it's also fairly hard. It's kind of an anomaly to have lightweight and hard wood. Usually with hardness you get heaviness, but Turkish kind of defies that logic. If I was a young man, I'd find me some Turkish walnut seeds and plant me some trees. But I'm not probably young enough to ever see those trees get big enough to use. Now, to get your checkering cleaned out, it's better to do it now than to try to wait till later when you're trying to recut it with a checkering tool, because it'll clog your tools up. To get that cleaned out, you need a stiff, I use a toothbrush that's had the bristles clipped to where they're only about 1/8 of an inch long, and they're real stiff, but they're not hard enough to hurt anything. They're not hard enough to damage and dig into your wood. I've seen people use a soft metal brush, like a brass brush, but I've seen the damage that a brass brush can do. I stay away from that. If you have some stubborn areas, like down in that checking, you can lay a rag over it, pour just a few drops of lacquer thinner on that rag, and it'll just keep it right on there. It'll saturate that, and then you can take your brush and brush it out.